in case some of you are pretty new to what's going on, there's been this thing called Leading Hax. I'm not sure how long this has been around or anything like that, but it's basically the notion where a character, or well, more specifically, the notion that a character, given a scene or given like a moment, they'll always lead with an ability. Like for example, let's say I have Arceus, for example. Arceus, like, he throws an attack or something like that, and going by debating standards, we'll just assume that he'll always throw that attack every debate. Like, he'll always start off the match with that. That's essentially what Leading Hax pretty much is. And it doesn't really have a definitive name to it whatsoever, so that's kind of why I dubbed it Leading Hax. And I'm sure I'm not the first person to also disagree with it. I'm probably not even close to being the first person to disagree with it. But it's been a relatively, I wouldn't even say new, I'm not sure, but it's been something that's been applied to debating nowadays. Basically, what would happen is a person would ask, what does this character lead with? And usually the person who's using that character or repping that character would usually say, they lead with so-and-so. And pretty much the whole notion would be that that character is going to start with the debate, start that within the debate. But here's the thing with me. I fundamentally disagree with that type of philosophy and how that applies to debating, for example. One of the main reasons why I disagree with this is it completely goes against one of the main fundamental pillars of standard battle assumption, or assumptions that we basically make in a battle. In case you don't know what those are, as the name implies, those are assumptions that we just assume that are universally applicable to any battle, in any match and stuff like that. Those are what standard battle assumptions generally are, and generally they're based on, you know, logic and shit like that, like, you know, but it goes against basically standard battle assumptions. Like for example, it completely goes against the character part of the whole thing. What I mean by that is, alright, going back to my Arceus point again, let's say that we have Arceus theoretically do that in a match. Well, that will completely go against his character, and one of the reasons why I say that is because, granted, Arceus is not dumb, he's not stupid, he's not going to always start up the match doing some wailing attack or something like that. That's not going to do anything about it. He's nigh omniscient and he's intelligent. That's not how he's going to do. And if you want a more notable example of it, like, let's take an example from the same series, Mewtwo. Someone who is ruthless, well, Mewtwo, Frieza, or basically any character that relies on just wanting to brutally kill people and all that stuff. Some characters like that. And let's say that one of them throws like a random attack or something that does jack shit, and we assume that they just start off with that every match. Okay, that completely contradicts their character. That completely goes against their whole character. The whole point of them is that they want to kill as fast as possible, or the whole notion is that they just want to end the match quickly. So, given the character, why would they do that if that completely goes against their character and go completely against what they would do? For example, like going back to Mewtwo, he would just go for a mind hacks, or he would just completely mind wipe that person. Or Frieza would just destroy the fucking planet outright, like he did with Goku, you know? He would just destroy the planet outright. So when you get all these characters, right? Characters who rely on stuff like that, who like rely on, like, you know, stuff like that, and it just becomes odd. And applying it, like, here's the thing, it's not a universally applicable thing. You just cannot go with that logic. Like, not only does it completely contradict character and all that stuff, but it just doesn't even make sense for some characters. Like for example, let's go with one example. I remember saying, someone said that Altair doesn't lead with plot hacks before, or something like that, and that she just usually hits people with like knives and shit. Like, okay, so let's go with that notion. That completely goes against the fact that Altair as a character, she usually favors plot hacks, and not only that, but like, it completely contradicts her character, because she's another person who, yes, admittedly, she does play around with opponents, but that's only when they're weaker, or that's only when she deems them not a threat. Normally, when she goes all out and all that stuff, she'll either just mess with the plot or basically mess with the opponents in a multitude of ways and all that stuff. So, for characters like Altair, if we assume that she doesn't use plot hacks or something like that from the start, it completely goes against the way, and her mentality within debating and stuff like that. Like, basically her mentality being that she only does stuff like that when she knows she's far stronger than an opponent or something like that. And she only plays around when she already knows that she can beat them and stuff like that. Put her against someone that she knows that she can't, like, you know, take on head on and stuff like that, then yeah, of course she's gonna think more strategically and stuff. That's within her character. And really, if you want to boil down this video, it kind of just boils down to character. A lot of leading hacks just doesn't make any sense. Now, granted, there are times where it does apply. Sometimes a character will consistently do something as their first move and all that stuff. In that case, leading hacks does work. Because, well, not only is it proven in series that they just consistently do that, but also it usually fits in within their character and all that stuff. That's an instance of where it does apply, but oftentimes it's misused and a lot of assumptions are thrown around. Like, it just in the case it just doesn't make any sense whatsoever. So yeah, overall, as a concept, leading hexes fundamentally is dumb, because not only does it make a lot of assumptions about a character, but sometimes it can be at its worst and completely contradict what that character would do in series and all that stuff, and that completely diminishes the point of standard battle assumptions, which factors in that character. Like for standard battle assumptions, you wouldn't see someone like You wouldn't see someone like Pacifist Frisch just go out murdering someone. That completely goes against their character because they're a pacifist. They don't do stuff like that. At the same time, standard battle assumption doesn't mean that someone who normally doesn't fight doesn't mean they can't, because the whole point of it is to equalize stuff and make it to where they will fight regardless if they're a pacifist or not. But at the same time, Frisch isn't someone that's going to go out and just completely murder someone brutally just because they can, because that's not who they are, at least within that route. And there's many other examples I can pull as well. But point is, you cannot take character away from a versus match and all that stuff. Like, also going on to another example, a character who is normally arrogant and usually fools around and shit like that, like for example Super Saiyan J4, Gogeta basically. Someone like him, of course they're not going to open up with something crazy because, well, they're arrogant and all that stuff. They're arrogant and overestimate themselves. That is a fundamental part of the debate and the versus match, because they're not gonna just outright, destroy someone and all that stuff and all that. So in essence, whether you realize it or not, character does play a role in it. And when you completely go against a character, you completely make things go away. And that's one of the reasons why leading hacks as a concept just doesn't work, because it completely contradicts character and stuff like that. But if you want another reason why I fundamentally disagree with it, it's because a lot of people who use it, a lot of people who definitely use it often doesn't realize, like, they often they also do it just to downplay or just to like completely misrepresent a character and that stuff. It kind of plays into what I said before about character, but at the same time, I've seen some people like use it to say that one character wouldn't win because they're not going to use this ever, even though that's just not proven. And as I said before, it goes against character and all that stuff. But a lot of people are abusing leading hacks to say that the character won't win, or say the character isn't powerful or stuff like that. Like, it just doesn't add up or make any sense whatsoever. And mind you, the reason why I'm talking about it, because it's kind of widespread, at least on Versus Battle Wiki, the base jungle, and like on all these other wikis and stuff like that, it's commonplace around. So that's kind of one of the reasons why I want to address it and stuff. And I'm sure I'm not the first person to voice my disagreements with it, but I'm not sure if anyone else has made a video on this. So in essence, this video can just boil down to two things. One, a lot of people abuse it, and abuse it for the wrong reasons because they completely make assumptions. And two, it just completely goes against character. So yeah, in essence, leading hacks as an idea is fundamentally flawed. But not only is it fundamentally flawed, it just fundamentally doesn't work whatsoever. At least when it's not proven. Because as I said before, if it's proven and a character just consistently does it, then yeah, of course it applies, because that's just the consistency within the series. But if a character is like, if a character just doesn't show it outright, then my point is just don't even make an assumption that they'll always start out with it. And in often case, it just doesn't add up. But yeah, that's pretty much it. That's my mini rant. I guess you can call this a rant, whatever. I initially only wanted to cover leading hacks, as I really found it stupid to begin with and really disagreed with it. But then I also remembered there was also something else I wanted to cover as well, which is something called Resistance Negation. For those of you who are in the dark about that, it's basically when someone makes a claim that, let's say that some character resists being erased from existence, right? And some character is able to erase them from existence despite the fact that they're resistant to it. That's often considered resistance negation. Another prime example of it is, like, for example, a character who can regenerate from, I don't know, their soul being erased or something like that, and yet a character has managed to able to kill them despite that being an apparent thing. That's also called resistance negation. Now, here's my issues with the thing itself. Resistance negation by its very nature is stupid. Now, before I even get into the topic itself, I should address that it does exist in fiction, and there are very blatant examples of it existing in fiction. One prime example of it is the vampire killer being able to kill Dracula. The reason why that's considered resistance negation because it's made specifically to negate everything that Dracula has, and it's made specifically to negate his resistance and stuff like that. And another thing is the many spells from Star vs. the Forces of Evil. Many of them are meant to completely negate the resistance of other people. My main example being Toffee, who, despite being able to regenerate, can't regenerate his finger and stuff like that. There's stuff like that that exists in fiction. However, it's really abused, and there's many examples of it being misused in many debates I've seen. But the point is, resistance negation, when it's not proven or it's not proven in universe and stuff like that, it's stupid, and it's stupid to apply to a versus debate within itself. Let me give you an example. Let's say that someone has a causality, right? Okay, someone is acausal, right? Someone who is beyond cause and effect, and some character was able to affect them with a paradox, right? And that character apparently has resistance negation, or being able to negate a causality. My bad. I don't know why I stopped there. But basically, yeah, someone being able to negate a causality and stuff like that. That doesn't make any fucking sense whatsoever. Think about it. Like, that literally contradicts itself within its very nature. If I'm able to affect someone who has a causality with a time paradox, that literally contradicts itself in its very premise. Another also example of this is, like, for example, being able to let's say like a character who is blatantly is reliant on something, or for example stated he can't be killed without something or something like that, and the character's able to kill him despite that. That's just a contradiction to what he stated and the premise itself. So when people apply this, like, this character has mid-galley region and I'm able to kill him and put him out, I clearly have mid-galley resistance negation, like, that's so stupid. No. I would also like to point out, like, a lot of writers and all this stuff, they don't often really care about the abilities of a character. They don't often care about stuff like that. So that's how you can get characters who manage to die despite having some insane regen feats within their own series. That's how you get characters who can die and be killed by these characters and stuff like that. This is, writers don't particularly care about that whatsoever and stuff. So you basically are taking what is considered an anti-feat, or basically something that contradicts the very notion within itself, and using that to say, oh, this is negation. That's stupid and it's dumb. And the only time that I agree with it is when it's blatantly proven in series. But a lot of these times, a lot of these people who use it completely ignore the fact that I hate to be this type of person, or I don't mean to diss writers, but writers usually do not care about that, and they're not really, and they usually don't even remember stuff like that, details like that. So when you basically use a contradiction and slap an ability on it to say that it's negation and stuff like that, it's dumb. It's dumb by its very premise, and I don't even agree with it often. Like I said, there are examples of it in fiction, undoubtedly speaking, but a lot of people that I see who use it do not understand that there's no proven applicability within the series itself, and it's just another example of plot-induced stupidity and stuff like that. But yeah, I fundamentally disagree with resistance negation by its very premise, and again, by its very premise alone, it contradicts usually, unless it's just, you know, proven. But yeah, that's pretty much my gripes with that.